Professor Krelix had seen many things in his 400 years of archaeological work across the galaxy. He had unearthed lost civilizations, decoded ancient languages that predated faster-than-light travel, and once accidentally released a plague of sentient moss that took 3 months to negotiate with. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the sight of a human bringing a toddler to an active archaeological dig on a moon that barely had breathable atmosphere. "Captain Morrison," Krelix said, his 3 eye stalks swiveling independently to convey maximum disapproval. "This is a restricted research site. We have specifically categorized this excavation as hazard level 9. There are energy signatures we do not understand. There are artifacts that have already hospitalized 2 of my team. And you have brought a small human larva." Jake Morrison, looking entirely too relaxed in his flight jacket and cargo pants, shrugged. "Her name's Emma. And my babysitter canceled last minute. What was I supposed to do? Leave her on the ship with the autopilot? That's how you get surprise hyperspace jumps to uncharted sectors." Emma, for her part, was utterly fascinated by Krelix's eye stalks. "Daddy, why does the purple man have wormy eyes?" "Emma, we talked about this. It's rude to call them wormy. Professor Krelix has very distinguished ocular appendages." Krelix made a sound like a deflating bagpipe, which was how his species expressed frustration. "This is highly irregular. The Council will hear about this breach of protocol. The Council asked me to fly you here because I'm the only captain who knows how to navigate the Theta debris field without getting shredded into confetti." Jake replied cheerfully. "So unless you want to walk back to civilization, maybe we can focus on why you called me down here in the first place." The truth was, Krelix did need to focus. Because sitting in the center of the excavation pit, surrounded by scorch marks and the remains of 3 very expensive research drones, was an object that had every scientist on his team simultaneously excited and terrified. It was roughly cylindrical, about 3 feet long, and covered in inscriptions that glowed with a faint golden light. The metal, if it was metal, seemed to shift colors depending on the angle you looked at it. Purple, then green, then a shade of blue that didn't quite exist in standard spectrum analysis. And every single being who had tried to touch it had been violently rejected. "Behold," Krelix said, gesturing with 2 of his forearms, "the lost weapon of the Urkathian warriors." Jake whistled low. "The Urkathians? Didn't they conquer like half the galaxy before vanishing mysteriously 12,000 years ago?" "Indeed. And according to the inscriptions we have managed to translate, this weapon was wielded only by their greatest champions. It says here, and I quote, 'Only the mightiest warrior, proven in countless battles, whose spirit burns with the fire of true combat, may claim this sacred armament. All others shall be found wanting and cast aside.'" "That's pretty metal," Jake said. "What does metal have to do with anything?" Krelix's eye stalks crossed in confusion. "Never mind. So what happens if someone unworthy touches it?" As if in answer, one of Krelix's assistants, a brave but foolish 6-armed hexapod named Rill, reached out with 1 tentacle to poke the artifact. There was a sound like reality hiccuping, a flash of golden light, and suddenly, Rill was embedded upside down in a snowbank 30 yards away, despite the fact that this moon did not actually have snow. The artifact had apparently generated it specifically for comedic effect. Emma clapped her hands. "Again. Again." Jake scooped her up before she could toddle toward the artifact. "Let's not touch the angry glowy stick, sweetie." "But Daddy, it's pretty." "Lots of things are pretty. Supernovas are pretty. The plasma storms on Viridian 5 are pretty. We don't touch those either." Krelix was making notes on his datapad with 2 hands while gesturing dramatically with the other 2. "Fascinating. The artifact not only repels the unworthy but seems to calibrate its response based on the attempt." Rill's tentacle touch resulted in minor spatial displacement with added humiliation. When Commander Jex tried to grab it with his full strength, he was launched through the upper atmosphere and had to be retrieved by shuttle. "So what's the plan?" Jake asked, keeping a firm grip on Emma, who was now trying to wiggle free. "We have sent for Commander Throk of the Galactic Defense Force. He is arriving within the hour. If anyone can claim this weapon, it is he. His combat record is impeccable. 372 confirmed victories. Defeated the warlord of Proxima. Single-handedly held off the swarm invasion at the Battle of Krios 9. If he is not worthy, then perhaps no one in the galaxy is." Jake nodded thoughtfully. Then Emma tugged on his collar and whispered loudly, "Daddy, I need to go potty." Krelix's eye stalks drooped in defeat. This was going to be a very long day. Commander Throk arrived exactly 58 minutes later, because he was the kind of being who considered being 2 minutes early to be precisely on time. He emerged from his military transport like a walking tank covered in ceremonial scars and medals that clinked when he moved. 9 feet tall, scales the color of gunmetal, with eyes that glowed a faint red, and a jaw that could probably bite through starship hull plating. Emma, freshly returned from the portable restroom facilities, looked up at him with wide eyes. "Daddy, is that a dragon?" "That's Commander Throck, sweetie. He's a Saurian. Very decorated. Very respected. Does he breathe fire?" Throck's eyes focused on the small human. "I do not breathe fire, tiny human. I breathe honor and glory." "That sounds like it would hurt," Emma said seriously. Jake bit back a laugh. Krelix looked like he wanted to crawl into the excavation pit and bury himself. "Commander Throck," the professor said quickly, "we are honored by your presence. As you can see, the artifact awaits. We have prepared a ceremonial approach path, and I have taken the liberty of having my team record this historic moment from 17 different angles." Throck nodded, his massive head moving with the weight of absolute confidence. "I have studied the Urkathian warriors my entire military career, their combat philosophy, their training regimens, their codes of honor. I have modeled my life after their principles. If this weapon seeks a worthy warrior, it shall find one in me." He began his approach, and Jake had to admit, it was pretty impressive. Throck moved with a combination of grace and power that suggested he could destroy you efficiently and make it look good doing it. The alien soldiers who had accompanied him stood at attention. Krelix's research team held their collective breath. "By the ancient codes of battle," Throck intoned, his voice resonating across the dig site, "I come before this sacred armament as a warrior tested in the fires of countless conflicts. I have faced death and emerged victorious. I have defended the weak and struck down the unjust. I have never retreated. I have never surrendered. I have never known defeat." "That's a lot of nevers," Jake muttered. Emma was more interested in her juice box. "Daddy, this one tastes like purple." "That's grape, sweetheart. Now shh, the Dragon Man is having a moment." Throck reached out with one clawed hand, his scales seeming to shimmer with barely contained energy. His fingers came within inches of the artifact. The golden glow intensified. Krelix leaned forward eagerly, then Throck touched it. The sound was like someone had slapped the universe. There was a flash of light so bright that everyone's vision went white for a solid 3 seconds. When Jake could see again, Throck was gone. Just completely absent from the dig site. "Where did he go?" Jake asked, looking around. Krelix was frantically checking his sensors. "According to these readings, he is approximately 150 feet that direction." One eye stalk pointed straight up. They all looked up. High above them, growing larger by the second, was Commander Throck, tumbling end over end and screaming what were probably very dignified war cries in his native language. He landed with a thunderous crash in the same snowbank that had caught Rill earlier, which had somehow gotten bigger. Emma giggled. "The Dragon Man went flying!" "I saw that, sweetie. That was very flying indeed." Throck extracted himself from the snow with as much dignity as a 9-foot warrior could muster while covered in frost and having his medals all tangled up. "The artifact is clearly malfunctioning," he announced. "I am highly decorated. My worthiness is documented across 17 star systems." "Perhaps," Krelix said delicately. "The weapon's criteria are different than we assumed." Over the next 20 minutes they tried everything. Commander Jara, a crystalline being from the heavy gravity world of Obsidian Prime, who could bench press a cargo freighter and had once punched a meteor into dust, approached with quiet confidence. The artifact launched her sideways through 3 research tents and somehow into a pile of packing foam that hadn't existed seconds earlier. Next came the Collective, a hive mind entity representing exactly 1,047 individual soldiers who had merged into a single consciousness after the Battle of Neuraxis. They approached as one, speaking in perfect unison about their combined military experience spanning 12,000 years of subjective combat time. The artifact responded by separating them back into 1,047 very confused individuals who were suddenly scattered across the entire moon's surface. "This is illogical," Throck growled, his pride clearly wounded. "I have the highest combat rating in the Defense Force." Krelix was furiously scrolling through his translations. Wait, there may be an error in my interpretation. The ancient Urkathian dialect is extremely complex. When I translated Mighty Warrior proven in countless battles, I may have missed a nuance in the contextual grammar structure." "What kind of nuance?" Jake asked. He was only half paying attention because Emma had discovered an interesting rock and was trying to put it in her mouth. "The kind that changes everything," Krelix said slowly, his eye stalks converging on the artifact with new understanding. The kind that means we may have been testing entirely the wrong criteria. Emma dropped her rock and looked at the glowing weapon with renewed interest. Daddy, can I hold the shiny stick now? No, sweetie. The shiny stick doesn't like being held. But I asked nicely. That's very polite. But Emma, wait. She was already toddling toward it, her little legs moving with that unstoppable momentum that only 4-year-olds possess. The momentum that has toppled civilizations and exhausted parents since the dawn of time. Jake lunged forward, but Emma had already built up a surprising amount of speed for someone whose legs were approximately 8 inches long. Throck moved to intercept, his warrior reflexes kicking in, but Krelix held up all 4 arms in a gesture that somehow conveyed both stop and oh no and please don't let me witness a child's death all at once. If we grab her suddenly, we might startle her into falling onto the artifact. Krelix shrieked, his eye stalks practically tied in knots. Jake skidded to a halt 3 feet from Emma, who had stopped her approach and was now looking at a bug that had landed on the ground. Emma, sweetie, how about we go look at Daddy's ship? You can press buttons. I want to see the shiny stick first. The shiny stick is not a toy. You always say that about the good stuff, Emma said with the kind of logic that was ironclad when you were 4 and made absolutely no sense to anyone older. Throck was breathing heavily, his claws flexing. Captain Morrison, control your offspring. Oh, sure. Let me just use my control a toddler button. I keep it right next to my make it rain money switch and my instant sleep 8 hours dial. Jake crept forward slowly. Emma, what if we make a deal? You don't touch the angry stick, and we get space ice cream. Emma's eyes lit up. The kind with the fizzy crystals? The very same. Okay. She turned away from the artifact and ran back toward Jake, who scooped her up with the relief of a man who had just dodged a diplomatic incident. Krelix deflated like a balloon. That was far too close. The human child nearly touched an artifact that has hospitalized multiple trained warriors. She's fine. Crisis averted. Can we maybe put a fence around this thing? But Throke was pacing now, his tail lashing in frustration. This is unacceptable. I am Commander Throke. I have trained for 300 years in 17 different martial disciplines. I have mastered weapons from 40 species. I have studied the ancient texts of the Urkathian warriors more thoroughly than any living being. And I cannot claim their weapon? Commander Jara, who had extracted herself from the research tents, approached again. Her crystalline body was now humming with determination. Perhaps the artifact requires a specific mental state. Complete focus. Absolute zen. The clarity of purpose that comes from perfect inner peace. She sat down in a meditation pose that looked physically impossible for someone made of living gemstone. For 5 full minutes, she hummed at a frequency that made everyone's teeth hurt. Then, radiating tranquility, she stood and walked toward the artifact with the grace of a ballet dancer made of expensive jewelry. She got within 2 feet before the artifact made a sound like a disappointed trombone and encased her, in a block of the same mysterious snow, this time with what appeared to be a bow on top. Why does it keep making snow? Jake asked. We're on a moon with no atmosphere to speak of. Where is it even getting the water? That is the least of our concerns, Krelix muttered. The collective, having finally reassembled themselves from across the moon's surface, approached with new determination. They had a theory. We believe the artifact requires not individual strength, but collective power. The combined will of many warriors acting as one. This is why we shall succeed where individuals have failed. They formed a perfect phalanx, moving in absolute synchronization, chanting in 1,000 voices that somehow harmonized into a single tone. It was genuinely intimidating. Even Jake felt a little awed. The artifact waited until they were inches away, then played what could only be described as a carnival sound effect, and teleported each member of the collective into a separate location, this time spelling out the words, "Nice try," using their bodies when viewed from orbit. Krelix's satellite feed confirmed it. Throck roared in frustration. This is absurd. What does this weapon want? I have defeated warlords. I have conquered armies. I have skills honed over centuries. Maybe that is the problem, Krelix said quietly, staring at his datapad. I have been reanalyzing the inscription with a more thorough linguistic matrix. The phrase I translated as mightiest warrior proven in countless battles has several possible meanings depending on context. And one alternative translation is unburdened by the weight of violence. That makes no sense, Jara said, still dripping melted snow. It is a weapon. Weapons are used for violence. Are they? Krelix's eye stalks swiveled independently, a sign he was thinking deeply. Or perhaps the Urkathian warriors understood something we do not. Perhaps they valued something beyond mere combat prowess. Throck snorted. The Urkathians conquered half the galaxy. They were the most fierce warriors in known history. They did not value weakness. They also vanished mysteriously, Jake pointed out. Maybe being fierce warriors wasn't actually working out for them in the long run. Emma tugged on Jake's jacket. Daddy, I'm bored. Can I play with the stick now? Still no, sweetie. But nobody else is playing with it. That's because it keeps throwing people into snowbanks. I like snowbanks. I know you do. You also like eating dirt, but we're trying to cut back on that too. Krelix was muttering to himself now, running calculations. Unburdened by violence, pure fighting spirit. Untainted by hatred. What if the weapon does not want someone who has fought many battles, but someone who fights without the corruption of war? Someone whose spirit is fierce but not hardened by bitterness. So, what a child? Throk said with heavy sarcasm. Perhaps we should line up infants from across the galaxy and see which one the ancient superweapon prefers. Everyone laughed at the absurdity. Everyone except Jake, who was holding Emma and suddenly feeling a very cold sense of realization creeping up his spine. Oh no, he said. What? Krelix asked. Nothing. Definitely nothing. We should go now. Emma needs her nap. I don't want a nap. See, she's very tired, makes her contrary. But Emma had that look in her eyes. The look that every parent learns to recognize. The look that says, I have decided something, and no force in the universe will stop me. She wiggled free from Jake's arms with the slippery determination of a greased weasel and took off running toward the artifact. Emma, no. This time, nobody could stop her. Emma's tiny hands wrapped around the artifact before Jake could close the distance. He was 3 steps away. Throk was mid-roar. Krelix's eye stalks had gone completely rigid with horror. Commander Jara was already looking away, unable to watch a child get vaporized. The golden glow intensified. Energy crackled across the surface. Emma's pigtails stood on end from the static electricity, and then she giggled. Daddy, it tickles. The artifact wasn't launching her into the stratosphere. It wasn't encasing her in snow. It wasn't teleporting her across the moon's surface. Instead, the ancient weapon of the Urkathian warriors was shrinking, reshaping itself, transforming from a 3-foot cylinder of cosmic death into something approximately the size of a toy sword, perfectly proportioned for a 4-year-old's hands. The golden glow shifted to a cheerful pink. What? Throk said flatly. Is happening? Emma held up her new weapon triumphantly. Look, Daddy. It likes me. I see that, sweetie. That's great. Very concerning, but great. Krelix approached slowly, his datapad extended, sensors going haywire. Impossible. The energy readings are stable. The artifact has bonded with her. It has accepted her as its wielder. His voice climbed 3 octaves. A human child is now the bearer of the most powerful weapon in ancient galactic history. Can I keep it? Emma asked. Absolutely not, Jake and Krelix said simultaneously. Emma's face scrunched up in that pre-tantrum expression that parents learn to fear. But before she could unleash the fury, she accidentally squeezed the weapon's handle. A beam of golden energy shot out, disintegrated a boulder the size of a transport shuttle, and carved a smiley face into the cliff wall behind it. Pretty, Emma said. Not pretty, Jake yelped. Very dangerous. Very much not a toy. But Emma was already waving it around, and with each movement, something happened. A force field bubble appeared and disappeared. The ground beneath them rippled like water. A holographic display materialized, showing what appeared to be tactical battle information in a language nobody could read. And then, inexplicably, the weapon began playing a jaunty little tune that sounded like a music box mixed with a theremin. Make it stop, Throk groaned. I cannot watch this. 300 years of military service, and I am being upstaged by a human larva with a singing superweapon. Emma was dancing now, spinning in circles while the artifact chimed along. Each spin created a small localized gravity anomaly that made everyone's hair float upward. Emma, sweetie, can you please stop spinning? Jake pleaded. But Daddy, it's fun. Krelix was frantically taking notes. The artifact is responding to her intent, but with a playfulness filter applied. When she wanted to see something pretty, it carved decorative patterns. When she enjoyed the music box on her last birthday, it produced similar sounds. It is interpreting her desires through the lens of childhood wonder rather than combat application. So you're saying the most dangerous weapon in galactic history is now being controlled by someone who still can't tie her own shoes? Jake said. Essentially, yes. Commander Jara stepped forward cautiously. Child, may I examine the weapon? Emma clutched it protectively to her chest. No, it's mine. The shiny stick chose me. The artifact pulsed in agreement and generated a small rainbow overhead. Throck sat down heavily on a rock, his warrior pride thoroughly demolished. I trained for 3 centuries. 3 centuries. There. There, Jake said, patting the massive alien's shoulder. If it helps, she also refuses to share her crayons, so you're in good company. Emma was now using the artifact as a pointer, directing its beam at various objects and assigning them new colors. A research drone became purple. A equipment crate turned plaid. Krelix's left eye stalk was now glowing neon green, though he hadn't noticed yet. We need to understand why, Krelix said desperately. Why did it choose her? What does she possess that the greatest warriors in the galaxy do not? Jake watched his daughter, who was now having a very serious conversation with the artifact about whether space ice cream was better than regular ice cream. The weapons seemed to be chiming in agreement. I have a theory, Jake said slowly, but you're really not going to like it. Krelix worked through the night, his entire research team running linguistic analysis, historical cross-references, and energy pattern comparisons. By morning, when Emma woke up from her nap still clutching the artifact like a teddy bear, he had his answer. The translation was wrong, Krelix announced, his eye stalks drooping with exhaustion. Catastrophically, embarrassingly wrong. Throke, who had spent the night questioning his entire existence, looked up. Explain. The inscription does not say only the mightiest warrior proven in countless battles. The Urkathian dialect has contextual modifiers that completely change the meaning. It actually says only one whose spirit fights without the shadow of battle's burden. That is nearly identical, Jara said. In your language, yes. In theirs, no. The Urkathians had 17 different words for warrior. The word used here, Kal Shara, specifically means one who fights with pure intent. A warrior whose aggression is not born from hatred, trauma, or the desire for dominance. Someone who battles because it is natural to their spirit, not because they have been shaped by violence. Jake rubbed his temples. You're telling me this ancient superweapon wanted someone who fights like a toddler defending their toy? Precisely. Krelix's eye stalks shot up with excitement. Your daughter possesses what the Urkathians valued above all else. She has fighting spirit, fierce determination, and absolute unwillingness to surrender what is hers. But she lacks malice. She has no concept of warfare as destruction. When she wields power, she thinks of play, of exploration, of joy. She turned my equipment drone purple, Krelix continued. Not because she wanted to destroy it, but because she thought it would look prettier. That is Kalshara. Pure intent, without corruption. Throck stood slowly. So the Urkathian warriors, the fiercest conquerors in galactic history, valued innocence over experience. Not innocence. Purity of purpose. They conquered half the galaxy, yes, but according to the historical records, they did so without hatred. They fought because they believed it was their nature, their art form. But then something changed. Krelix pulled up ancient texts on his datapad. The later generations became prideful. They fought for dominance, for glory, for revenge. They lost their Kalshara, and their weapons rejected them. They could not pass on their arsenal, Jara said quietly. They vanished because their own weapons abandoned them. The irony, Jake said, is that humanity's greatest warriors according to this thing are apparently our toddlers. The ones who will fight you to the death over which color sippy cup they get, but forget why they were angry 30 seconds later. Emma chose that moment to wake up, yawning and stretching. The artifact hummed gently in her arms. Daddy, I'm hungry. Can we have space pancakes? Sure, sweetie. Can my shiny stick have pancakes too? Weapons don't eat pancakes. Emma held the artifact up to her ear like it was whispering to her. It says it wants syrup. Krelix made a note. Fascinating. The weapon is developing communication protocols with its wielder. It's humoring her, Jake corrected. There's a difference. Is there, though? Krelix's eye stalks tilted in genuine curiosity. Throck approached Emma slowly, kneeling to her level. For a moment, Jake tensed, ready to intervene. But the massive warrior simply bowed his head. Small human, you have accomplished what I could not. You have proven yourself Kalshara. I acknowledge this. Emma patted his snout. You're a nice dragon. Do you want pancakes too? I would be honored. The Galactic Council emergency session convened via hologram within the hour. 17 species represented, all talking, over each other, all united in one opinion. A 4-year-old human could not be allowed to keep a weapon of mass destruction. Absolutely not, declared Councillor Vesh, a floating brain in a jar who considered himself very rational. The artifact must be secured in a maximum security vault on Central Prime. I agree, said Counselor Harmon, whose species had invented 3 types of doomsday devices before breakfast, for the child's safety and the galaxy's security. Jake held Emma on his lap while she colored in a datapad with the artifact lying across her knees. You want to tell her, or should I? Captain Morrison, this is not negotiable, Vesh said firmly. Emma, sweetie, these nice council members think we should put your shiny stick in a vault. Emma's crayon stopped mid-scribble. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, and then the red-cheeked fury that every parent recognizes as the harbinger of apocalypse. No, it's mine! The artifact began to glow. Not the cheerful pink from before. Something darker, more ominous. Captain Morrison, control your child, Vesh demanded. Oh, you want me to control her? Sure thing. Right after you explain to a 4-year-old why grown-ups are taking away something that chose her specifically. I'll just use my magic parenting powers that definitely exist and absolutely work on toddlers having meltdowns. Emma's tantrum was building. The artifact pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. Warning, klaxons started blaring across Krelix's equipment. The weapon is charging, Krelix said nervously. Energy signatures are spiking. It appears to be activating some kind of planetary defense protocol. Mine! Emma shrieked. The sky above the dig site split open. Holographic targeting reticules appeared over every ship in orbit. Ancient defense satellites that had been dormant for 12,000 years suddenly powered on across the entire star system, and somewhere deep in the moon's core, something very large and very angry woke up. The council chamber went silent. On second thought, Vesh said carefully, perhaps the artifact is safest with its chosen wielder. A wise decision, Throck rumbled. He was standing behind Jake now, arms crossed, looking every bit the 9-foot warrior. The child has proven herself Kalshara. To separate her from the weapon would be dishonorable, and potentially result in the destruction of several core worlds. Krelix added helpfully. The defense grid it just activated could sterilize this entire sector. Emma's tantrum subsided as quickly as it started. I can keep it? You can keep it, Jake confirmed, shooting the council a look that dared them to disagree. The artifact powered down. The satellites went dormant. The targeting reticules vanished. Emma went back to coloring like nothing had happened. However, Counselor Harmon said weakly, perhaps Captain Morrison could file regular reports on the artifact's status. Sure. Right after Emma finishes potty training. We're working on it. Krelix officially updated the artifact's inscription in the galactic database, where it once read, only the mightiest warrior proven in countless battles may claim this sacred armament. It now said, beware, weapon of minor destruction. Authorized wielder, Emma Morrison, age 4, humanity. Approach with caution and juice boxes. 20 minutes later, Jake was carrying Emma back to the ship. Her artifact-turned toy sword slung over her shoulder while she kicked her legs happily. Daddy, can we get space ice cream now? With the fizzy crystals? We can get space ice cream. Can my shiny stick have some too? Your shiny stick doesn't have a mouth. It says it'll make one. Jake paused mid-step. Please don't let your galaxy-conquering superweapon modify itself to eat ice cream. Okay, Daddy. Behind them, Throck watched them go, shaking his massive head. 300 years of training, defeated by a human child with a juice box. Krelix patted his arm sympathetically with 2 hands while taking notes with the other 2. If it helps, I suspect she would also defeat most cosmic entities, elder gods, and possibly the abstract concept of entropy itself. It does not help. No, I didn't think it would. In orbit, Jake's ship powered up. Emma sat in the co-pilot chair, swinging her legs and humming the tune her artifact had played earlier. The weapon rested in her lap, glowing a contented pink, occasionally chiming along with her song. The most powerful weapon in ancient galactic history had found its wielder, and she wanted extra syrup on her space pancakes.